Are you a shy person or maybe an introvert? Would you like to know how to turn that into your superpower and make more sales as a result? In this video, I'm going to talk about how to overcome shyness as a realtor and double your sales. If you like this video, hit the like button for me, subscribe to get more videos like it, and if you have any questions or suggestions, please post them in the comments below. A lot of people think that when you're an introvert or when you're shy, you're going to struggle in sales. And in some cases, that's correct. But I've been an introvert pretty much my entire life, and I've figured out how to turn it into my superpower. So in this video, I want to talk about how to overcome shyness as a realtor and how you can use it to double your sales. I'm going to give you some tips, some scripts, some different ways you can word things, and some things that you can consider that I've used over the years, and hopefully it will help you make more sales and become a better salesperson. So one of the things that have really helped me is when I'm maybe in a networking event, or I'm meeting, I'm going through, Facebook or Instagram, and I'm seeing people who could use my services. How do I engage them? So one of the things that has really helped me is to provide value first. So let's talk about networking, since most real estate agents do it, or you meet people out in public, and how do you get that conversation started and bring it back to your services without sounding like a pitchy salesperson? Because as an introvert, I hate being that pushy, twist the arm type of person. So if you're in a networking event or you're meeting somebody you haven't talked to, or you're getting introduced to somebody, one thing that has helped me is to learn about them. What do they do? Who are they? What's going on in their life? And ask them about themselves first, and then figure out how I can provide value. This is extremely helpful in a networking type of environment. So talking to them, being there to serve first, seeing how you can help them, and then seeing if there's anything that you can do to offer suggestions or feedback, that really makes me feel comfortable, more so than coming on strong and say, oh, I'm the #1 realtor in this town or that, or I'm just uncomfortable saying stuff like that. So this has really helped me. Is who are they? What are they doing? Do they, if I'm at a Chamber of Commerce meeting, for an example, and I meet a pool contractor, they're working with homeowners all the time, or maybe a flooring contractor, talk to them. How can they, what tips could I give them? How could I provide value? And then you can always end with something like here's an actual script. You could either end the conversation this way, or when it makes sense, you could say something like this. By the way, I help homeowners sell their home fast for top dollars. Do you know anyone who needs to sell? So you could be that blunt, or at the end of the conversation, or when you give them your card, however you want to do it. Another thing is ask questions first. When they're introducing themselves, ask them some questions. Hey, it's so nice to meet you. I'm Calvin. What's your name? Hey, what do you do? Oh, that's awesome. And then talk to them about their business. Bring them out. Draw them out. Another example is when you see a question online, maybe Facebook, Instagram, maybe on Zillow or whatever it is, where somebody's asking for help. Well, a lot of people absolutely attack the person like, hey, I can sell your home, direct message me or email me or call me here. What I like to do in that situation is, instead of showing up and selling hard, I like to show up and provide value. I like to offer information. I like to try to solve their problem. And in doing so, I'm building trust, rapport. That law of reciprocity kicks in, where you give somebody something first, they feel obligated to give you something in return. So show up with information and value first. That's another way to do it in an online setting, or maybe in a setting where somebody pops up and says, hey, I'm thinking of selling. Do you know any realtors? I'm sure they're going to absolutely get pounced by tons of people pushing their sales, this person or that person. That's when I like to offer value. So that's what I would suggest in that sort of circumstance. The next thing is use questions to lead prospects down a path that you want them to go. So maybe in a selling environment, or you're on a listing presentation, or you're working with buyers, instead of sitting there and trying to convince somebody or push your opinion on somebody, I've liked to use questions that lead them down a path. So for an example, if you're on a listing presentation and the seller is trying to negotiate your commission, instead of getting defensive or saying, listen, I'm worth 6% and I never work for less than that, you could then turn it into a question and get them to answer it and to empathize with you. Here's an example. So you could say, hey, listen, Mr. Seller, I completely respect and understand why you would ask that. That's a really good question. But let's think about this for a second. If you were a real estate agent and you were out showing homes, and if you sold homes, what home would you be the most motivated to sell, or to show first, or to try to convince your buyer to invest in? The one that paid the less, or the most compared to the average home on the market. So if there's 100 homes you could show your buyer, are you going to show the ones that pay the least or the ones that pay the most? It's up to you. And then you can just shut up and wait for the response and get them to come to their own conclusion. Now, obviously, how you word the question is going to make a huge difference on how they reply. So make sure you practice it or get the scenario down. But that's how, when I was a new realtor, I was able to navigate those waters by asking questions versus trying to convince them, because I'm a whole lot better at asking questions and being calm and quiet and using silence to my advantage than trying to be a pushy salesperson. Another example is, let's say you have just listed a home and you're trying to convince the homeowner to stage the home. Well, instead of saying, hey, listen, this home is ugly and it's cluttered and you're a slob and you need to put all this stuff in storage, obviously that's going to piss them off and offend them. So you don't want to come across like an asshole. So how do you do it? Well, you could even get them to put themselves into the buyer's shoes. And you could say something like this: hey, listen, Mr. Seller, I want you to think about it for a minute. If you were a buyer and you're looking at your home today as well as all these other beautiful homes on the market, and you were walking through them with your spouse or your significant other, would you enjoy looking at your home or one that is staged or maybe even empty? Now, obviously, we're not going to empty your home out, but what would you like to see? Do you have an easy time visualizing a home as your home when it has everyone else's belongings in it? And you can even ask those questions. And then if you really want to add to it and they're not going to the spot you want, you could tell a story. And you could say, listen, I was showing a buyer a home the other day. They were walking through all these homes. We were looking at 10 homes in one afternoon. And we walked through this home that was staged and it was set up, and there wasn't, it was pretty much neutralized, and they absolutely loved it and they could visualize their family living in it. Here at the beach where I live, a lot of the homes that are close to the beach, they take pictures of beach cruisers right outside of the garage or in a little patio area because they want people to visualize themselves in the home using the bike driving around the beaches area. It's absolutely brilliant. So you could ask questions like that that get them to a conclusion that you want them to come to. So here's a final example. If you're trying to get a listing and you're competing with maybe a top producer that's really aggressive and they're a really hard negotiator, and you know that it comes across in the listing presentation, and you're taking this other introverted shyness approach, one thing you could say is something like this. So, hey, Mr. Seller, would you rather work with a realtor who is going to drop the price, your listing price, to make up for the lack of marketing they do? Or would you rather work with one who is going to advertise your home to the most buyers so it sells for top dollar? And then you could be quiet and wait for a response. But you're more or less trying to paint the picture that, listen, an aggressive realtor is going to push you to drop your price to make up for their lack of effort. Or would you rather have someone like me who may not be just beating you over the head for a price reduction, but I'm going to advertise it better than them? Now, obviously, you want to play this to your advantages. If that's not your strength, then don't position it that way. But whatever your strength is and your weakness, you want to position the question to make yourself look better than the competition. So another thing that introverted people are good at is listening. And I believe this is one of our best superpowers. So when you're talking to sellers or prospects or buyers and people that you're working with, listen to their needs. What are they saying? Be a good listener. We already are by nature, so we don't have a problem with that. And then restate their concerns when you're offering your solution. So if you're working with a buyer, for an example, and they're talking about all the different things that they want in their dream home, don't speak over them and talk, just speak and answer their questions for them. Listen to their concerns. What is it that they want? And then use that as the solution when you're trying to find them the home. Say, listen, I know that you are really concerned about having a playroom for your kids. This home would be perfect. Or a backyard that's fenced in for your dog. This has a really nice fence. You won't have to build one. A fence could cost you $5,000 or $10,000 or whatever that is. And if you bought this home, you're going to save that money. This is a great home for your pets. So this is kind of a consultative selling approach. And consultative selling is, in my opinion, a way more effective way to build trust, build the law of reciprocity, get rapport going. So when you're listening to them and you're listening to their concerns, you can speak to those concerns instead of starting to talk about objections they're not even considering. You can say, hey, what are your concerns? You can listen for those and you can overcome overcome those objections and those concerns in their head and help sell more homes. That's a really good way to be a consultative salesperson versus somebody who's practicing objection handlers and just refining their pitch with a fine-tooth comb. When you can be a consultative selling person, you could get them to do most of the talking and you'll make more sales than the person who's trying to convince them 24/7. The final thing, and we've talked about this a little bit, is using awkward silences to your advantage. I know that I've been on listing presentations with people that are an extrovert and they hate awkward silences, but I believe that they are one of the most powerful things in a sales environment. So for an example, if you're sitting down on a listing presentation, one thing that you can do is you can be assuming the sale along the way and saying stuff like, when you list with me today, and then once you get towards the end of the listing presentation, you can start doing trial closes, and this is where the awkward silence really comes into play. So you could say something like this: let's get, hey Mr. Seller, it's been great talking to you today. Let's go ahead and get your home sold. Based on everything that we talked about, do you think $1.5 million is a fair listing price? And while you're saying that, pull out your listing agreement and fill in the spot where it talks about the listing price, or at least get it out there in front of them, and you can start writing these things down that you will fill into your actual listing agreement. So you could either A, pull out a blank piece of paper and start writing these things down, but this is just assuming the sale and going right into it. And they may be thinking in their head, I haven't agreed to listing it with this person yet, I don't know what I'm going to do, what can I say? But if they start answering your questions, you're starting to lead them down a path to signing that listing agreement. So saying stuff like, hey, let's talk about the listing price really quick. We talked about a lot of things. We went over the comps. What do you think is a fair price to sell your home? What would you be ecstatic with, and what would you be absolutely disappointed with? You could do that. You could do a either or. That's another way to soften the questions. And when you ask those questions, you could either write them on a piece of paper, you could pull out the listing agreement and start putting it into the actual contract, and they're going to be looking at it being like, oh crap, we're starting to fill out the paperwork. And then you didn't even, and if they stop you with an awkward silence like that and say, hey, listen, we didn't even talk about that yet, you can go back to their objections and their concerns, overcome them if it requires that, and you can constantly come back to that section and keep asking those questions, keep that contract out in front of them, and actually get it filled out and get it going. So hopefully these were really helpful. These tips have helped me. These strategies have helped me. So if you like these tips, I'm sure you would love having your own real estate book that you can give away to clients. It's a really good way to make a first impression and to break through the ice when you're talking to somebody for the first time. If you'd like to learn more about how you can get your own book in your real estate business, go to authorify.com. It's spelled authority with an F instead of a T, authorify.com, and learn all about it. And if you like this video, hit the like button, subscribe to get more videos like it, and if you have any questions about this or things you'd like to add, post them in the comment box below, and I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching.